ground did not shake first. There was no warning, no crack forming slowly at the edges, no tremor to give the watching crowd a moment to step back. One moment, Qarun stood among them, surrounded by everything he had accumulated, everything he had become, the full visible weight of a life built on wealth and certainty, and the absolute conviction that what he possessed could not be taken. And then the earth opened, not slowly, not gently, with a finality that left no room for appeal, no space for reconsideration, no last word. The ground swallowed him. It swallowed his palace. It swallowed his treasuries, his possessions, every object that had ever represented his power. It swallowed all of it, completely, without remainder. And then it closed again. And the people who had been watching him just moments before, the people who had looked at his wealth with longing, who had said to each other, "If only we had what Qarun has." Those same people stood at the edge of what the earth had done, and they said, "Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extends provision to whoever He wills and restricts it. Had Allah not been gracious to us, He would have caused it to swallow us too." The earth kept nothing of Qarun visible. No monument, no grave, no marker. Nothing remained above the surface to indicate that he had ever stood there at all. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved one thing only, the warning. This is the story of Qarun, and it is not a story about a man who had too much money. It is a story about what wealth can do to a mind, and how a single sentence spoken in arrogance can be the most dangerous thing a person ever says. To understand what was lost when Qarun was swallowed, you first need to understand what he was. He was from the people of Musa alayhis salam. This detail matters. He was not a stranger, not an outsider, not someone who had never been near the truth. He was among the community of the Prophet alayhis salam. He had access to the same revelation, the same guidance, the same signs that had parted a sea and broken the power of Pharaoh. He was not a man who had never been shown anything. And then there was the wealth. The Quran describes Qarun's treasure in a way that resists easy translation. It says that the keys to his treasuries alone, not the treasuries themselves, the keys, were so heavy that a group of strong men struggled to carry them. The keys. This is the scale the Quran gives us. Not a count of his gold, not an inventory of his palaces, just the keys. And even those were too heavy to lift easily. In the world Qarun occupied, wealth of this magnitude did not simply mean comfort. It meant power. It meant that other men measured their own lives against his. It meant that when he appeared in public, people stopped what they were doing to watch. The Quran tells us this directly, that he went out before his people in his adornment. He was visible in his wealth. He displayed it. And people looked at him and felt something the Quran names without flinching. They wished they had what he had. And this is where the story begins to turn. Because what Qarun represented to the people around him was not simply material. He represented the answer to a question human beings have asked across every civilization and every era. What does a fully blessed life look like? From the outside, Qarun looked like the answer. He had the treasuries that required armies of men to manage. He had the palace that announced itself before you arrived. He had the adornment, the display, the weight of accumulated possession that made other people stop and reassess their own existence against his. And within all of that, within the accumulation and the display and the admiration, Something else was growing inside Qarun, something the people around him could not yet fully see, something far more dangerous than wealth itself. The warnings came. This too the Quran records without softening. His people came to him, not enemies, not strangers, but his own community, and they said, "Do not exult. Allah does not love those who exult. Seek, through what Allah has given you, the home of the hereafter. Do not forget your share of this world. Do good as Allah has done good to you, and do not seek corruption in the land." Read that carefully. They did not tell him to give everything away. They said, "Do not let the wealth make you forget what it is for. Do not let it become the thing you serve instead of the one who gave it." These were not the words of people who resented him. These were the words of people who could see something happening to him that he could not see in himself. And Qarun answered them. His answer is one of the most significant sentences in the entire Quran, not because of its violence or its drama, because of how ordinary it sounds, because of how completely it could have been said yesterday. He said, "I was only given this wealth because of knowledge I possess." That is the sentence. That is all of it. Understand what Qarun was actually saying beneath those words. He was saying that his wealth was not a gift. It was an outcome, the natural and deserved result of his own capability. And if it was the result of his capability, then it reflected him. It confirmed him. It was, in the deepest sense, evidence that he was right about himself. This is the psychology the Quran is dissecting. Not simple greed, not ordinary materialism, something more precise and more dangerous than either. It is the belief that what you have is a measurement of what you are. When a person reaches that belief, the possession becomes inseparable from the identity. Releasing it would mean releasing something of the self. And any suggestion that the possession came from somewhere beyond the self, from a source that could withdraw it, that doesn't owe it, becomes not just uncomfortable, but impossible to accept. Qarun could not hear the warning, not because it was unclear, but because hearing it would have required him to accept a version of himself that his wealth had made him incapable of inhabiting. The warning said, "You are a recipient. What you have was given to you." And Qarun's entire constructed self said, "I am the origin." Between those two positions, there was no negotiation possible. The Quran then deepens the story. When Qarun appeared before his people in his adornment, some said, "If only we had what Qarun has." Those who had been given knowledge said in response, "The reward of Allah is better for the one who believes and does righteous deeds." Two groups, looking at the same man, seeing completely different things. The first saw the visible evidence of a successful life. The second saw a man standing on ground he could not feel moving beneath him. Neither group knew yet which of them was right. The resolution had not arrived. And then it arrived. فَخَسَفْنَا بِهِ وَبِدَارِهِ الْأَرْضَ. So we caused the earth to swallow him and his home. The Quran gives no extended account of the moment itself, no description of what the crowd saw first, no record of final words, no detailed narration of the seconds between standing and gone. The sentence lands like the event itself, sudden, complete, without appeal. In one moment, solid ground became movement. The earth beneath Qarun did what no wealth could negotiate with and no power could resist. What had felt permanent suddenly became unstable. What had looked immovable collapsed inward, and everything he trusted, the palace, the treasure, the visible architecture of his power, began to disappear beneath him. Consider what that moment contained for the people watching. They had seen him that morning. They had watched him move through the city in his adornment, the full weight of his wealth on display. Some had gone home with his image in their minds, measuring their own lives against his. And now they stood at the edge of an absence in the earth, where the most visibly wealthy man in their world had been standing. The palace did not remain. This is what makes Qarun's destruction unlike almost any other form of loss human beings can imagine. In ordinary loss, possessions outlast the person. Buildings stand, wealth transfers, estates are inherited, something remains. Here, nothing remained. The keys that required armies of strong men to carry. The treasuries those keys opened. The palace visible from a distance. The adornment. The accumulated proof of everything he believed himself to be. All of it taken simultaneously with him, in a single movement of the earth, without delay, without remainder. The people who had said that morning, "If only we had what Qarun has." Those same people now stood at the closed surface of the earth and said, "Had it not been that Allah was gracious to us, He would have caused it to swallow us too." Notice what happened to them. The object of their desire that morning had become, by evening, the thing they were most grateful to have been spared from. The transformation was total, because what they witnessed was not merely the death of a man. It was the complete and visible erasure of everything a human life can accumulate. The earth kept nothing visible, no grave marker, no ruins, no physical evidence that Qarun had ever stood there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved one thing only, the account, the warning. The Quran closes the story with a sentence that functions as both verdict and lesson. He had no faction to help him against Allah, and he was not of those who could help themselves. Qarun had spent his life accumulating exactly the things that, in the ordinary logic of the world, constitute protection. Wealth provides options. Wealth creates allies. Wealth builds the capacity to respond to threat. He had more of that than anyone around him. And when judgment came, none of it functioned. Not one key, not one wall, not one relationship built on the foundation of what he could offer. The ordinary logic of the world reached a boundary and stopped. Qarun did not stop with it, and the earth received him. Here is what the story of Qarun is actually about. Not wealth. Wealth is not the danger the Quran is identifying. The Quran does not present Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiyallahu anh as a warning. It does not present Sulaiman alayhi salam, who was given a kingdom beyond imagination, as a figure of destruction. Wealth in itself is not what brought Qarun beneath the earth. What brought him beneath the earth was a sentence. I was only given this because of knowledge I possess. That sentence, in its brevity, in its ordinariness, in how entirely reasonable it sounds to a modern ear, contains the complete theological error that destroyed him. It relocated the origin of what he had. It moved the source of his wealth from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to himself. And once that relocation was complete, everything that followed became inevitable. A man who believes he is the origin of his own provision cannot truly be grateful, because gratitude requires acknowledging a giver. He cannot be generous in the way Allah commands, because generosity requires understanding that what you hold was given to you. He cannot hear warnings, because warnings assume vulnerability, and a man convinced of his own sufficiency no longer feels vulnerable. Qarun was not destroyed by what the earth did to him. He was destroyed by what that sentence did to him, years before the ground moved. This is why the Quran preserved his story, not to warn wealthy people that they might lose their money, not to suggest that prosperity itself is dangerous, but to illuminate something about the relationship between a human being and what they have been given. The era of Qarun is not rare. It is not ancient. It did not end when the earth closed over him. It is one of the most recurring eras in human history, repeated in different centuries, in different currencies, by people holding different kinds of treasure. The form changes, the sentence stays the same. I was given this because of what I know, because of what I built, because of what I am. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not require elaborate wickedness to withdraw what He gave. He requires only the one thing Qarun could not bring himself to do, to remember where it came from. Wallahu alam, and Allah knows best.